What is up, everybody? BK Voiceover here, and welcome to episode 3 of my Offseason Scenario Series for 2022. Last week, we went over and discussed 5 cut candidates that the Seahawks might move on from going into this offseason, and the cap savings that we could see from that. This episode is going to focus on a couple of other cap savings moves that do not involve cuts, whether it's restructuring, extending players, and then we will get right into the free agents that I would like the Seahawks to re-sign. I am also going to preface this video by saying I cannot find a consistent list of all the Seahawks free agents, unrestricted free agents, restricted free agents, exclusive rights free agents. Some sites don't even have some of the players, and some have players that I have never heard of. So I am basing mine off of a couple of my choices for designations of free agents that I believe is correct. So take a couple of the designations with a grain of salt. Starting off, as a recap from last week's episode, we're currently sitting at $63,520,586 in cap space for the 2022 season. That is, we created that cap space by cutting Bobby Wagner, Jason Myers, LJ Collier, Benson Mayo, and Chris Carson. So now we're going to take a look at a couple of other cap savings moves that they should go for. The first one is restructuring Russ's contract. So currently he's set to make about $37 million against the cap this season. If we went ahead and since he has 2 years left on his deal, you could extend Russ. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. But restructuring Russ's contract right now would open up about $9 million in cap space. Now, by the way, this is not like reducing his cap hit. This reduces his cap hit for this season, but it is also going to balloon his cap hit in the next offseason, 2023. But as far as I'm concerned, the Seahawks should be in Rams mode that they were like halfway through the season, like being all in. Like, this is the season where you really need to like do it. So we'll estimate like $9 million in savings, so that brings us up to 72, 520, 586. The second part, which is I think kind of the more underrated choices that I think needs to happen, is we need to extend Puna Ford. So if you'll remember, he signed a 2-year deal in last offseason. I think a lot of people expected him to get an RFA tender applied to him, but I'm really happy that they gave him an extension. So anyways, what do I think that would look like? So currently he is set to make north of $10 million against the cap next season. I would extend him for something similar to what you did last year, maybe like 3 years, $24 million, and that way we can like cut that cap hit down a ton. We'll estimate that that'll get us, like, for the time being, $5 million in cap savings. So that gets us up to about 77, 20, 586. And then last but not least is giving DK Metcalf that big fat extension that we know needs to happen. He definitely had a down season. I attribute that more to the foot injury that he sustained in week 4 than to like, oh, he's on the decline, or oh, he was massively overrated. I think we have yet to see this guy's ceiling. So absolutely, if you do not sign him this offseason, I think that's going to be a massive mistake. He is only going to get more expensive, and you would be stupid to let a talent like DK Metcalf walk out the door for like nothing. I'm sure, like, if you really wanted to, you could trade him for like a haul, like first rounder plus something else, maybe like a day 2 pick as well. But again, I think that would be stupid. So DK Metcalf extension. What would a DK Metcalf extension look like? Well, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins kind of reset the wide receiver market. He got that like 2-year, $27 million extension. 2-year, $54 million extension, so $27 million average per year from the Cardinals when he signed there. And that kind of blew the entire wide receiver market out of the water. So some people will be like, oh, that's like an aberration. That's not going to have any big meaning going forward. But I think that is going to absolutely play into the contract negotiations for DK. It's going to pay him out well over $20 million, I would say. So for the time being, let's say Let's just say it's like 4 years, just for the sake of argument, it's 4 years, $85 million. So that's 21.25 annual. And since he's technically he's going into the last year of his rookie contract, and he's also getting that performance enhancement to his contract because he did make the Pro Bowl in one of his first 3 seasons. So I think you could reduce his cap hit this season a bit. So let's just say that that'll give you like $1 million in cap savings. So 78. And these are in no way like hard numbers. These are just estimates based on relative stuff. So anyways, now we get into the fun part of the video. We're going to actually start going through free agents and taking a quick look at who I think should be kept and cut. And if we're going to keep them, how much do I think they're going to get? First off, and probably one of the biggest deals this offseason, is Dwayne Brown. So Dwayne Brown's obviously been our left tackle for the past 4 seasons. He's been Russell Wilson's blindside blocker, and he's done a great job. But the thing that is concerning is he is getting older. We kind of saw at the end, or at the first half of last season, he was playing just straight up bad. Like, he allowed 8 sacks, a ton of pressures. Some of that is on Russell Wilson. Some of that's also on Kyle Fuller because he had one of the most horrible seasons by a center I've ever seen. But again, he's 37 now. I think he's going to be 38 by the start of next season. And he really turned it on at the end. But I think he's coming to the end of his career pretty quickly. My only issue is I don't like the left tackles that are going to be available in the draft at pick 42 as like your future starters. But I don't think there's anyone you can get that can start for cheap in year 1, which we really need this season, unless you want to shell out massive amounts of money for a Teron Armstead or an Orlando Brown or an Eric Fisher. So for the time being, I'm going to say that Dwayne Brown, we bring him back on something similar to like a deal that Jason Peters would have signed back in like 2019. So I'm going to say 1 year, $6 million. So that brings that down to 72, 520, 586. That's obviously not a comma. Next up on the list is Gerald Everett. So Gerald Everett signed a 1 year, $6 million deal with the Seahawks this past offseason. I thought it was a good pickup. All things considered, statistically, he had his best season in the NFL, and I think that there's still a lot that we can get out of him. So he kind of became Russell Wilson's safety blanket, so I think you bring him back. I think similar compensation to what he made last year. So I'm going to say sign him to 3 years, $18 million. Maybe he wants to sign for a shorter amount of time so he can hit free agency again. But either way, if Gerald Everett doesn't end up coming back, honestly, I'm kind of okay with that, just because this free agency period is flooded with good tight ends to go after. So yeah. 3 years, $18 million. Obviously, it's not going to be $6 million his first year at the contract, so we'll estimate that's like a $3 million cap hit his first season. So 69, 520, 586. Next, we're up to Quandre Diggs. And this is one of the spots of most contention, because as much as I love Quandre Diggs, I think shelling out a ton of money, because Quandre Diggs has absolutely earned a massive extension with his play over the past few seasons since he's come to Seattle. My problem is I cannot justify paying $30+ million between both of my starting safeties, especially in the modern NFL where safety is a less important position. So I am going to make the tough decision to say I'm going to cut. Well, I say cut, but he's a free agent, so it's not really cutting. It's just I'm choosing not to re-sign him. So no re-signing. I think Marquise Blair can play free safety part-time, but his injury history has shown me he can't do it consistently. There are some good safeties that I think in the draft, especially that I think you can get in round 2 with pick 42. Daxton Hill, I think, could immediately start at free safety for you. Who else? Jaquan Brisker, but I don't think he's going to be available in round 2. Also, Louis Seen from Georgia is a really intriguing prospect that I think that they should take a look at. So I think there's plenty of good options in free agency and in the draft if they choose to tackle it. So I'm going to say no to Quandre Diggs. Ethan Posick. He definitely turned it on at the end of the season. I'm not going to say that, but he also has issues staying healthy. And because he's had issues staying healthy, we've had to start Kyle Fuller for half of the season, and we all saw how terribly that turned out. I don't think Ethan Posick has the talent, I think, to be a starting center in the league. His PFF grade shows that. I think they ranked him like 15th out of 38 qualifying centers. But anyways, Ethan Posick, I would re-sign him on the cheap to be a backup, because I think we should definitely be pushing in free agency to get a starting center that isn't Posick. But I'm not sure that Posick will take backup center money. If he's willing to take 1 year, $3 million, like he took last season, I would be totally willing to bring him back. So, or maybe a little less. I would say I would bring him back for 1 year. 1 year, $2.5 million is what I'd be willing to bring him back for. And that's just to be a backup, because I'm assuming that we're going to spend some big money on another starting center, whether that's Ryan Jensen from the Buccaneers or Brian Allen from the Rams or Ben Jones from the Titans. Jason Kelsey is also a name I've seen thrown around there. He's a little older, but I think he could probably do all right. Matt Paradis from the Panthers is also a name I've seen thrown around a little bit. So yeah, we'll keep going from there. So we're down to about 67,020,586. Next up, Brandon Shell. Absolutely, I don't think we re-sign him. He missed a good chunk of games this season, and also Jake Curhan, when he was playing for him, played definitely well enough to be a starter for this team. So yeah, no re-signing him. Rashad Penny, I think you absolutely bring him back. Whether it's a 1 year prove-it deal or a short contract, I would be comfortable 2 years, $8 million, with a bunch of contract incentives. So that's $4 million a year. Of course, it's not going to be $4 million the first time around. It'll probably be like, well, we'll say it's like 2.5. So we're down to what? 64 million, 520,586. And again, I'm not applying like, 2 years over, or $8 million over 2 years. It's going to be $4 million this year. I'm decreasing the cap hit because the cap goes up pretty much every year except for last season because of COVID. So obviously the first year cap hit is going to be a lot less than going forward, and that's by design. Al Woods. He was definitely one of our best defensive players on the team last year. The problem is I don't see, unless he's willing to come back for backup money, I don't see him coming back, because I'm a big fan of picking up Akeem Hicks in free agency and moving Puna back to 1 tech, then Akeem Hicks at 3 tech, and then Al Woods would probably be sitting behind him, or you draft somebody to sit behind Puna Ford. Either way, Al Woods is going to be 35 years old next season. So I'm going to make a tough decision to say I'm not going to re-sign him. Sidney Jones is also a really intriguing one. I do really want to bring him back, but both him and DJ Reed had really good seasons. And I think what's going to end up happening is you either bring back one or you bring back the other. I would be totally fine with signing them both back. But Sidney Jones, I think, is definitely going to be making a bit less. So Sidney Jones is more of that like prototypical Pete Carroll corner that he really likes. The long, lanky corners with a big wingspan. He also has that second round pedigree. Honestly, he would have gone in the first round in his draft if he didn't get that really bad injury. Honestly, before he came to Seattle, he was considered a bust, and then he just came out and just happened to be like one of the best corners by advanced metrics in the league. I guess not in the league. That's a little too high. I think PFF had him around like top 30 corners in the NFL. I'm willing to bring back Sidney Jones on like a 1-year deal, maybe like 1 year, $5 million. That's not what I wanted. 59. Gino Smith, obviously he's not coming back. I was, even last season, I was like, he played fine. He played good in the 3 games that he had to start for Russell Wilson and the half game he had to start. But he also got into some legal trouble this offseason, and I think we should get younger at the backup quarterback position. I've been saying that for a while. Alex Collins, no, I don't think you bring him back. He's fine on limited snaps, but I think what we kind of saw as the season went along is he cannot be like a guy that is one of your primary backs. He just kind of ran out of steam at the end. So yeah, absolutely not bring him back. Robert Kimdichie, another Pete Carroll, I'm going to sign former first-round picks and try and get the most out of them that I can and show that they weren't absolute busts. Turns out to be, like, pretty much nothing. So we're absolutely not bringing Robert Kimdichie back. Rasheem Green is very boom or bust. And plus, I think that there are going to be teams out there that are going to overpay for him. He had his best season statistically, like he hit 6.5 sacks. But the thing is, when he wasn't getting sacks, he wasn't getting pressure at all. So yeah, I think that there's going to be a team that's going to overpay for him. Kind of like Shaquille Griffin last season, or Quentin Jefferson back in the 2019, or was that 2019 or 2020 offseason? I think it was 2020 offseason. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to re-sign Rasheem Green. Will Dissly is actually kind of intriguing because there are these new, I think they were added to the CBA back in like 2020, but they're called 4-year qualifying contracts. So basically what that is it's a contract that's veteran minimum plus like up to 1.35 million. That's you can use on certain players that meet conditions. Will Dissly is one of those players that meets those conditions. So while the contract is for veteran minimum for his time of service in the NFL, plus 1.35 million, you're only on the hook cap wise for the vet minimum part of that. So I think you absolutely exercise that option with Will Dissly, and then he'll only be paying vet minimum. I'm actually going to go double check what's vet minimum for a 4-year player. What's vet minimum for a 4-year player in the NFL? There we go. Minimum salary based on year service. So for rookies, for 4 to 6 years, it's $990,000. So it's going to be. So we're only on the hook for $990,000. So if we go back to here, it would be. So we would be at 58, 530, 586. I think that would very much be in Dissly's interest, just because he was putting up some great numbers at the start of his first 2 seasons before he destroyed both of his knees, well, a knee in each of those seasons. Oh shoot, did I say no resigning? I'm like, no, 4. So I'll just say vet minimum. You bring him back. you run back your tight end group because I think it does have a lot of potential. DJ Reed. Here's my first big splash signing. DJ Reed was by far and away your best corner, and everybody knows it. I think he's going to ask for the bag, and this is one of those cases where I think you absolutely give him the bag. So I'm going to say, when you're not paying if you're not paying Quandre Diggs, you absolutely have to pay DJ Reed. So I'm going to say, I'm going to give him 3 years, $36 million. So that's $12 million average per year. We'll reduce that since it's the first year of the cap hit. We'll just say it's like $6 million. Cap hit of $6 million. So 52. Yeah, 52, 530, 586. Wait. That's not what I wanted to do. Why is that struck through? Take that out. Jamarco Jones. He has just been unavailable and hasn't been that impressive when he's played. I'm not going to re-sign him. And then last but not least, for your unrestricted free agents, Ryan Neal. 100% going to re-sign him. Not for vet minimum. I'll give him like a 1 year, $2 million deal. He absolutely deserves it. So now that we have gone through our unrestricted free agents, we're currently sitting at $50,530,586. All right, so now we're going to get into our four restricted free agents. I have Phil Haynes on here as a restricted free agent just because I cannot find any information for the life of me on what his actual designation. Some people say he's an unrestricted free agent. Some sites have him as a restricted free agent. Other sites just don't have him on as a free agent at all. So we're just going to assume that Phil Haynes is a restricted free agent for now until I hear otherwise. So for those of you that do not know what a restricted free agent is, so per the free agency definition, a restricted free agent in the NFL is a player with 3 accrued seasons and an expired contract. So they are free to sign and negotiate with any team, but their original team can offer them one of various qualifying tenders that come with the right of first refusal and or draft pick compensation. So there's 4 of those tenders. So you have a first round tender where it's a 1 year contract that is worth, in 2022, it'll be worth $5,432,000. And if a team wants to match that offer and sign him to their team, the team that takes the player that had the tender applied to them has to give the other team a first-round pick. So, for example, if for some godforsaken reason the Seahawks decided, hey, we want to give Bless Austin a first-round tender, and some team wants to match that, and they agree, then the other team would get Bless Austin, and in return, we would get a first-round pick. Of course, that's never going to happen because Bleshaw Austin is not worth a first-round pick. Similarly, second-round tender, it's the same as a first-round tender, but it's slightly less at $3,986,000. And instead of a first-round pick, it's a second-round pick. Then you have original draft rounds. So that is worth, I think this year it's worth $2.54 million. And then if somebody matches that, they get a draft pick compensatory with whatever draft the player was, or whatever round the player was drafted in. So Bless Austin was drafted in the 6th round, so if you put an original round tender on him and somebody took him from you, they'd owe you a 6th round pick. Brian Monet is an interesting one because he was actually undrafted, so he doesn't have any draft compensation tied to where he was taken. And that's where a right of first refusal comes in. That's a little less than an original round draft pick at $2.433 million. But basically, I'm trying to remember how the right of first refusal ones work. That's right. So basically, the team has the right to match any offer sheet that they offer you. So basically, you can give them a right of first refusal. So you give them 2.13 or 2.433 million. And if another team is like, hey, I want to give you $3 million, then the Seahawks could be like, oh, well, actually, we want to give him $3 million, and in that case, the Seahawks can keep him no matter what. So anyways, going into this, we're going to make this real quick. Bless Austin. He was a decent backup. I could see an argument for bringing him back as a restricted free agent. It's just that original round tender is just a little too rich for me, so I'm going to say no. Brian Monet as well. I am okay if you let Al Woods walk, which in this case we are going to let Al Woods walk. Keeping Brian Monet on as a backup is absolutely critical, so I would absolutely extend him a right of first refusal. So that would be minus $2,433,000. Kyle Fuller, dude shouldn't even be in the NFL. I'm absolutely not resigning. I'm not resigning him for free if that was an option. Phil Haynes was drafted in the 4th round, and he actually played pretty well. The problem has never been his talent, I think. The problem has just been that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So, yeah, I would give him an original round tender. If somebody wants to pay up, we'll get a free 4th round pick out of it. So, yeah, I'll give him an original round, or original draft round. I could also see them spending a 2nd round tender on him, but I don't think that's going to happen. Round tender, so 2,4,0,0,0. And last but not least, you have your exclusive rights free agents. So your exclusive rights free agents are any player, I think it's with 2 or fewer accrued seasons in the NFL, where if you have an expiring contract and the team that your contract is expiring on offers you a contract for the league minimum, depending on your number of accrued seasons, then you are not allowed to negotiate with any team. You pretty much have to take the contract or nothing. Number 1 is Penny Hart. So Penny Hart has been on the Seahawks squad for on and off for like the past 2 seasons. He made the starting roster in the past 2 seasons, and he's a decent special teamer. He has a few receptions in the past few seasons. He's a decent like wide receiver 5 or 6 on your depth chart, and a decent special teamer. So I think you bring him back. He has 2 accrued seasons. So according to PFF, he would be, he would be valued at $895K. I think you bring him back for that. Next up, you have John Erasura, who had 1 catch in his first season in the NFL and then has been bumping around the practice squad in 2020 and then basically missed all of 2021 after completely exploding his Achilles in the preseason. Erasura just hasn't been able to be on the field. He never gets to use, so I think it's time to just don't worry about it. We've already signed 4 other wide receivers to futures deals, and I think they're all better than John Erasura, so I'm going to say no. No re-signing. John Reed, I think you absolutely 100% sign him to an ERFA tender. He was really, I think it was a great trade with the Texans, and when he did play on the field, he showed that he can play with some of the more experienced corners. So absolutely bring him back. So he would be, what did I give you? $895. Yeah, I think he has 2 accrued seasons, so yeah, it would be $895. So equals $1,000. John Radigan, I think you absolutely give him an ERFA tender. He's only been in the league for 1 season, so his cap is going to be less. So it'll be, he's played 1 season, so according to Spotrac, that would be he's owed $825K. $825,000. Marcus Webb, injured the entire season. I know literally nothing about him. I'm going to say no. Nigel Warrior, he was a decent defensive backup. He can play corner. He can also play safety. I think you absolutely keep him around. I think he'll also be making $825K. And then last but not least, Dakota Shepley. I haven't seen enough from him to say that he could back up like whoever ends up being our starter, but I think he could be a good option as like developing into your backup center of the future. So I'm going to say absolutely bring him back. He has 2 accrued seasons, so he'll be making $895,000. And congratulations, we have now gotten through making a couple more cap savings moves and re-signing a bunch of free agents. And what do you know? We're pretty much exactly back where we started cap space wise when we started this season. That's a lot of money to go after some free agents, which is what we are going to be discussing in next week's video. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more of this content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great one, and go Hawks.